Hello, I would like to welcome you to our um, prophetic insights to the current events that are happening as of today. Why did Russia invaded Ukraine? And why are wars being fought today? Land, gas, oil, wars. A strategic location and resources vital to a nation's security is at stake and is at play here. Now, if you remember the argument of Putin, the president of Russia, that during the collapse of the Union Soviet Socialist Republic, USSR, in the 1990s, the end of the Cold War was formally announced between George H. Bush and Mikhail Gorbachev, and that the Cold War era has ended, according to them. What happens next is that there was not a formal agreement about the NATO expansion. It's just what Gorbachev heard, that NATO will not expand as eastward in order for the former Soviet republics to gain their independence, and that Ukraine will turn over its nuclear arsenal to Russia. In exchange, it will not be accepted into the alliance between the Western powers. So this was the statement that Putin had mentioned of one of his bases of why he invaded Ukraine, because of the deception of the West, led by the United States and its allies, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, a military alliance between these Western parts of the country, and advancing its membership towards the doorsteps or the border of Russia, with the independent states of Estonia, Lithuania, and Poland are members of NATO. NATO is considered to be the enemy of the Russian Federation during the Cold War. And after the end of the Cold War, they gave the assurance, the NATO gave assurance to Gorbachev, but there was no formal writing. So this was understood by Putin today as a breach of verbal contract or agreement. And the red line for Putin was if Ukraine will be accepted in the military alliance of NATO, which the President Zelensky, was actively pursuing, according to intelligence sources, and that Putin is not happy with that. Historically, Ukraine and Russia are cousins, and what I mean cousins are they are historically close. They speak the same language, in some parts modifications, and there was the struggle with the strategic location of Crimea, and in 2014, Crimea was annexed by Putin because of its fuel reserve. So in 2014, Putin invaded Crimea and took over that part of the peninsula, and Ukraine considered it as their territory, and the United Nations backed that claim by Ukraine, but Russia will not yield back the Crimea Peninsula because of its strategic ports and the oil reserves and the gas in oil reserves. It's also the passageway for their navy to be able to use that that area for their whatever they will do in the future, and it's their access to the Mediterranean. So this is in a nutshell what happened to Crimea, and the fighting spilled over to Russian dominated, or they call it separatist, region of Luhansk and Donetsk. And when Putin uh, declared their independence, they decided to move westward towards the major cities of Ukraine, and that is what's happening as of today. So Ukraine, because of the stance of their president and their government towards the West, this is not acceptable to Putin for its strategic defense and for its protection. And another dimension of this war is the struggle for gas and oil. It is known that Russia is an energy producing country, as well as Ukraine, as well as basic commodities as wheat and other minerals and other resources, palladium and other minerals, as I've said. So basically, what is happening now is that Russia had considered taking over the whole of Ukraine, because they wanted Ukraine to be a buffer zone, a part of their defense, land defense, because on the north is Belarus. It's already an ally of Russia. So, what are the implications of this ongoing war? Well, it is extremely important for us to understand why this is happening, because it will affect the economy, the global economy, and the threat of a nuclear war if this will continue. So basically, we are seeing here the map of Ukraine, and Russia is on the east, and Ukraine borders it with Poland, Romania, Moldova. Moldova, there are Russians here, minority. Then they're not part of NATO. Romania and Hungary, they are all allied with NATO right now, and Poland, and this country, Slovakia. So Putin wants to have this strategic location, Ukraine, because Belarus on the north is there, and the other smaller states, they are able to they will be able to defend if in case there's an invasion. But Ukraine is non-negotiable for Russia. And the fact that if NATO will accept the application of Ukraine, Ukraine could then claim Crimea back to its territory, which if Russia will fight back, then it will trigger Chapter 5 of the NATO defense, which is an attack to one of its members. It's an attack to all, meaning to say all Western countries, including the United States, will fight with Ukraine. So this is a terrible situation. Crimea is now occupied by Russia, annexed formally, and Ukraine is claiming that it is it's part of their territory. So you could just imagine that this is going to be a no-win for Ukraine. The former president was a pro-Russian president, but he left the country, and then Zelensky, who is close to the West, and that's why he is calling for help. But NATO cannot help. Once NATO step in and Ukraine is defended, then Russia will trigger its nuclear arsenal because it is an attack. Uh, and it's an attack. It is an illegal attack because Ukraine is not a member of the um, NATO alliance. So this is what is going on. So to recap, what's happening here is a tragedy. War is always a tragedy. War is destruction, and war is not a welcome development in the global order. But this was necessary for Putin in his own mind, and the world condemned him with economic sanctions. They cannot defend Ukraine, or they cannot send boots on the ground or aircraft in Ukraine, because that will violate Russia's red line, because Ukraine is not yet a member of NATO, even though Zelensky would like to ask them for defense. What they can do is send weapons and send money, and that is what's happening, and also send them sanction Russia. This will backfire because Russia will fight back if Russian leader Putin will still hold onto his power. So the world is in a dangerous situation. War was created because of oil, gas, and location, strategic location. And the justification of the Russian side is they were deceived by NATO. And NATO would say they have not made that commitment to Russia when the Cold War was over. And that is where the situation aggravated. It is the assurance of the West versus the perception, the understanding of the East, that the balance of power will not be disturbed, but it was disturbed. So Putin made his move before Ukraine joined NATO. So this is where we are now, and the effects on this is global high commodity prices. Expensive gas, expensive energy, expensive oil, and the tit for tat, the offense, cyber attacks, and the fighting of the fight between Russia and the West will continue, as this is now happening. So as a Bible believer and as a student of the Word of God, what does this mean? It means that Christ's words are real and are true. He mentioned to his disciples that before the signs, before the end of times, before his second coming, there will be deception, and that is true. Deception, that there will be people who will claim that they are the Messiah, whether they are government officials, politicians, or business people, to save the world. Regardless, God says, do not be deceived. This will happen. God, through Jesus Christ, who is considered God, said that. Jesus said also wars and rumors of wars will happen. Famines, pestilence, earthquakes. These are just the beginning of sorrows. And then we are asked by Jesus Christ, those who believe in the Bible must endure. The world has not only changed during the past 2 years, the world is now on a different peril. The onslaught of deception is all around us, and the escalation of events leading to possible World War III, nuclear war, is closer than we think. Only God now can stop the annihilation of the human race. And so this is what's happening in Ukraine and Russia. And I hope I have added to this conversation. The prophecy is clear, and we need to endure. And the gospel of the kingdom will be preached to all the world. And in the end,